Hello, Calaveras County, and welcome to another edition of Mondo Calaveras. I'm your host, Mike Taylor. Well, folks, we are 3 months past the Butte fire, maybe 4. I'm a horrible person at math, you know that. And we told you before the end of the year that we would catch up with this person again, and so I'm very pleased to have back Jason Baetzer from Calaveras County Environmental Health, who's going to bring us up to date on the cleanup on the Butte fire, which let's just jump right into it, Jason, but thanks for joining me again.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Now, how are we doing?
We're doing good. You know, I think we're doing the best that we can. Of course,
Sure.
Considering we would always like to be further along, with challenges with the weather and stuff have set us back. But we're doing good. So we're so far to date. Just checked with my crews. We've cleared just over 300 properties of debris. We have over 800 properties signed up into the program.
Oh my gosh, that number got huge.
Yeah, when I was here last, I believe we were around 600, 650. So it's increased quite a bit. We've provided some outreach to the public if they wanted to enter into the program, accepting them, or they could clean up themselves through the self-certification program. But and then we're just under 200 properties, I believe about 180, where they've the cleared properties of debris where they've had clean soil samples. So remember, as I mentioned before, that's one of the last steps. The last step is actually erosion control on the property, but the big last step where the county looks for as far as signing off on a building permit or placement of a temporary housing structure on where the burn structure was is get that clean soil sample.
Okay. Now, weather, just before we started taping here, we were commenting that, we picked a heck of a year to have a great winter, but so how is the rain affecting all of this? I imagine it's slowing you down quite a bit or just a little bit?
Quite a bit. There's a lot of, today, for instance, we weren't able to have any crews out. Tomorrow, we're planning on 24.
Okay.
Last week, we slowly built up. We were off over the Christmas and New Year's break for 2 weeks, and we slowly built up, but we can only, during the rains, have about 19 crews out. And that's looking at the site specifically. Each site has its uniqueness to it. Some are more challenging to others as far as the ingress, egress out, the driveways, slope on the properties, what's the soil conditions on the properties with the heavy equipment and trucks, and there's going to be impacts, but the crews are also trying to minimize the impacts. And then of course the wet weather, it's just safety reasons, not only with trucking, driving, but also the laborers and stuff. There's more potential for accidents and hazards performing the work. So in areas and sites that allow, and the crews where we can still work during the rains, we're trying to push through, but it does limit where we can go and how fast the crews obviously are slowed down when they are working in the rain compared to good weather.
Now I know, I want to say it was a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was between Christmas and New Year's, that I saw some photos in the newspaper where we were looking at the water samples from I want to say the Calaveras River. It might have been the McCullamy, but the Calaveras the Butte fire burned through the Calaveras River watershed, basically. So what are we seeing with the water quality? Is there much of this, some of the worries, some of the chemicals from our burned homes getting into the water?
No, not so much the chemicals. The big thing with the burn area, and talking to CCWD today, I was at a meeting with them on a different subject, but it's mainly the solids and the ash from the burned natural vegetation, which is
the first thing to wash away.
And then also the soil and sediments, so your total dissolved solids, and then with that there's just natural minerals, iron, manganese, that is probably going to see higher elevated levels in those water samples.
Now, you mentioned runoff in that. What, as that sort of last brick in the part that these crews do as properties are coming back to normal before you come back to build on them, are we seeing a lot of erosion? I haven't been out in the area to see, if these hillsides are starting to wash away. Are there some worry spots that you're seeing out there? Or?
Yeah, there's some areas that are higher concern, and Public Works and really with the roadways is identifying and looking at those site spots, especially public safety. Looking at ingress and egress out of areas and identifying those areas. But there's been a lot of groups as far as the Calaveras Grown is one group that's been helping private property owners.
Spreading lots of rice straw.
Yeah. And then our crews, when they perform the erosion control, it's specific to where the debris removal has occurred.
I see.
So we're looking at, stormwater best management practices around where the house or garage was or structure was, and then deploying straw around those areas and socks and or wattles, depending on the site, to maintain that that area. But as far as steep slopes off of that area, it falls to the private property owner, and then working with groups like Calaveras Grown and stuff to help mitigate. I know the county's working on some other potential funds, grants for that, but that's in the works right now.
And not to put you on the spot, but you mentioned funds. How much is this costing? Do we have a ballpark for that? And do we know about what kind of payback? That's the wrong word. All of a sudden, it fell out of my head. But what the county is going to be able to get paid back from the state kind of thing?
So the debris removal program is actually through a state program through the California Disaster Assistance Act. And so that funding, the state is actually funding the contractor for the debris removal process. And part of that process is going to get reimbursed by FEMA through the public assistance grant. They only reimburse a specific portion of the debris removal process, not all of it. So the county specifically, through that, whether it's my staff time that's spent on it, will be getting reimbursed, but most of this is done by local contractors and the main contractor, and they are getting directly paid by the state. So it's kind of the county is not funding the debris removal project. It's the state of California. And so they'll be reimbursed by the federal government. But cost, and initially, on average, it was anticipated, approximately $40,000 to $50,000 per lot. We're seeing that cost may go up a little bit just due to the trucking of the cost and the logistics of trucking all the debris out of the burn area to the concrete's going to Carson Hill, the metal's being recycled into metal recyclers, 2 different ones in Sacramento, and the ash and debris is going to Forward landfill in Manteca. So
now, you mentioned the concrete. Is that just kind of getting ground up and used as road base kind of thing?
It'll be recycled.
What now, just sort of for the trivial mindset in me, are these crews finding anything really surprising? You get to a certain plot, certain property, and suddenly there's this chemical that and I'm not suggesting people doing nefarious things or anything, but, and my knowledge of chemistry died long before I graduated high school. But all those things in a house that suddenly becomes a molten mass and just drops to the ground, have you found anything that you weren't expecting?
I think we've a couple times we've come across some higher munitions, 50 caliber or greater, most of that stuff. The one thing is a lot of the household hazardous waste, including munitions, was first swept by the household hazardous waste teams from the California Department of Toxics and their contractor, along with Fed EPA. But there's been a couple times where the crews have come across nothing really, so much out of the ordinary. I think at one time they came across what they thought was a grenade, but it was not a real grenade. So, but they're aware, that's part of the whole safety of the crews is, to be aware of things that could impact them and the workers, such as the munitions, of any small or large caliber, any kind of toxic hazardous material or hazardous waste. They do radioactive sweeps just to make sure, and people like to hang on to stuff from a long time ago, and we don't know what was in it. So, so there's those.
You might find out what the half-life was. But
exactly. So yeah, but nothing, nothing too
out of the
unusual.
ordinary.
No.
Speaking of the weather too, on properties that these crews haven't gotten to yet, do you kind of make passes by them after a particularly heavy rain comes through to make sure that things aren't washing down into a little creek or something that might run into the river?
Yeah, a lot of some of the sites early on that we identified that were close to sensitive receptors, such as the river, that's where we wanted to perform the debris removal first. And
sure.
Yeah, and recognizing that, and then those that we couldn't get to deploy some mitigation measures to prevent runoff. We're seeing a lot of most of the times the ash is staying in place. The rain, it's kind of solidifying, so we're not seeing too much runoff. But there are the sensitive sites. Crews do check those out, and just to make sure we're not having any environmental impacts. But again, we tried to set our initially. And the over 300 properties that we have cleared, we're looking at those sensitive receptors. So
it sounds like it's going fairly cleanly, as well as pretty much on track time-wise.
Time-wise, yeah. I think we were hoping to be over 300 properties at Christmas. We didn't quite make it, but again, we had those heavy rains right before, and so yeah, it is going. It's not a perfect process, mind you, but it's going well, and and to think that right now we have over 300 properties cleared is good, and to help restoring the community. And I always say yes, it's about getting people back on their property and cleaning up the debris, and part of the cleaning up that debris is when people move and rebuild, that they're not going to be looking at maybe somebody, their neighbor left and didn't want to do the cleanup and have to look at a debris pile for 5 years. So it helps with that socioeconomic rebuild. It's not just public health and the environment, but helping that whole community rebuild by having, we have over 800 properties signed into the program. So
did many people opt to do the cleanup themselves?
Right now, I believe we have 6.
Oh, okay.
6 people, and it's always been an option, and we've let people know that. I just think by the time resource-wise and cost-wise, that even if people do have insurance, the insurance doesn't cover the full cost, even if they were going to do it themselves to cover the whole cost. So this, that's the benefit of the program. Downfall of the program is that sometimes some people have to wait, and that's. And that's the.
Are they moving, say, from north to south, or is there a rhyme and reason to how it's moving along?
Yeah, that we have it in 5 different areas, and once we get into the Butte fire burn area into 5 different regions, and we have teams deployed there. Our max number of teams has been 34. Tomorrow, due to potential weather constraints, we have 24 scheduled. And so once we get into an area, we want to sweep that whole area.
Sure.
It really costs. Sometimes we get calls. Well, can you come over and clean our property? Well, if we don't have crews there, it costs a lot to mobilize and demobilize the crews and all the equipment and everything. So it's done in a systematic way, planned ahead where the crews are, and also looking at the logistics of trucks going in and out, because we have only a couple main arteries going in and out of
and those trucks are what, 10-wheeler about size?
10, some 12, and
they look kind of like the front half of what I call a transfer dump,
which would be the 18-wheeler.
Yeah.
And so because a lot of the sites cannot, we just can't get 18-wheelers.
Too long.
Too long. And you know how a lot of the roads are.
Yeah, that's right.
And the size of those roads. So, and that's been part of the logistics issue is not being able to use bigger trucks. And
Sure.
so I believe we're up to last week or just this week on Monday we had 237 trucks going, 240 trucks
gosh.
approximately. But we made and just that day, and that's all trucks with all debris. But just that day there was over 300 trips made to forward landfill, which
Wow.
was significant.
Okay, so so one truck and driver might make 2 trips a day?
2 to 3.
Really?
yeah,
Even 3?
Yeah,
Okay.
depending on
How quick it gets loaded. and that
Exactly.
kind of
There's
thing.
all sorts
Yeah.
of logistical.
When you talk about a crew, what's on that crew that shows up on? So one crew will take care of one property, is that basically? So what comprises one of those crews?
So we have laborers, equipment operator,
Okay.
foreman. There's a debris monitors.
Okay.
There's air monitors. And then there's task force leaders, and then over them is division supervisors. So it's
Okay.
all set up through basically the incident command system, which is
So one
used.
crew is quite a few people.
Yeah,
then.
yeah, it's quite a few. I would say on average, anywhere from 8 to 12, depending
Okay.
on the crew. Yeah.
And how big a piece of equipment are they using? Is it, bulldozer size, or are you using smaller, like front loaders?
It all depends on the property.
Okay.
It depends on how much stuff is there. We had one property where we had 55 dump trucks
Oh, my
taken
goodness.
from the property.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's where also besides
They
the
were
challenges.
storing all the extra paint that they'd ever purchased.
Yeah, and we have some that have 30. Some may just have a couple cars. Some may have 30, 40 cars.
Yeah, that's true.
And so those are the challenges. And so when people, when we run into properties like that, it does take a little bit more time. And and overall, when I talk to the public, it's I'm hearing a lot of positive comments about not only the quality of work that's being done, but also how the crews interact. And some of these, we have half the crews are local contractors, but half are contractors out of the area. And then some of the consultants and debris monitors, there's a person, I believe, from Pittsburgh, from Pennsylvania. So we have people from all over the place, here, and helping with. And it's nice to see, or for me, as a county worker and involved in the process, and I don't know all 300 and some workers out there,
Sure.
but to hear positive feedback from the crews.
That is good. Aside from the fact that they're, and I know that this isn't a fault of anyone's, it's just people are getting a little impatient, which seems a little bit surprising to me, and I'm not trying to say hold your horses, folks, but you're not probably going to get a contractor in there to build your house right now.
Yeah.
Not with this kind of weather. You just, no contractor would start building when rain is in the forecast for the next 3 weeks, because you've got to get that roof on before you can really do the bulkier work. So what are, let's say, of those approximately 300, maybe a little over, properties that have been deemed cleared, or let's say, back up to just under 200, where we know everything's clean, so it's all been tested, you're ready to go. Are we looking at springtime for the contractors to be in and start hammering nails and building foundations?
I believe we, the building department, just an estimate here, don't hold me to it, but I believe they have about 20 plans right now where that people submitted.
Okay.
Our department, we just got an update from the operations, and we were able to sign off on about 7 of those, so they can, start their process. But how that depends on whether they have the compaction there with soils and
Sure.
all the weather constraints that come with that. So we're trying to, even if people can't build right away, our goal is to still process, clean the properties, get the clean soil samples, put up erosion control, so whether people want to build or not, they have that opportunity and submit the plans to the building department. So we're not looking at it to say, whether people aren't going to be able to build right away, so we're going to, we can take our time. It's still pushing
Still
as
being
fast
pushed
as
through,
as fast
sure.
as we can. Yeah.
Are the majority of the properties are their septic systems intact enough to where it's going to work kind of the way it is, or are we finding that most of them need some rebuilding? And
yeah, that's a good question. So most of them are good. Some of the impacts that we saw on in our initial site inspections were the inspection risers at the end of the leach lines might have been melted from the fire, the plastic risers, and if it was a tank, either a poly tank or a concrete tank that had the plastic risers that melted, and those need to be repaired.
Okay.
And those are a fairly easy repair. Heard of a few instances where maybe heavy equipment was taken over, whether it was during the fighting the fire over leach lines, engineered systems, where there was some damage there, but not too much overall.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
And I know Lake County, my counterpart up there, sent me a picture. Unfortunately, it was sad. They have a lot of systems that have an aeration tank on top that were melted during the Valley fire, and they sent me a picture of a deer that had fallen into a septic tank and couldn't get in effluent and drown, and is sad. And so there's those public safety. So I say that to caution people, and that's something, if we identify it, that we have mitigation measures put in place, whether it's just put plywood over the top and secure it right away, so one, we don't have public falling into it and or animals of any sort. So that was kind of the tragic things of that people don't think about. Yeah, exactly.
The once you folks have deemed the soil clean enough, and let's say that you have said the septic system is okay, whether or not a building permit has gone into the county, can the property owners then, say, drive a trailer in and dump the sewage into their septic tank and live on their property that way?
Yeah, so the Board of Supervisors in October passed a temporary housing ordinance that allows residents affected by the Butte Fire to live on their properties, whether in an RV or mobile home unit, for up to 3 years from the declaration of that in October. So, and then we would allow them to either tie into their existing septic system, and or if they couldn't, based on location of where they want to put the trailer, they could have it in a holding tank and either take it and dump it or have it pumped by a licensed contractor.
So a lot of these folks, where I was going with that is, how soon can people actually physically get onto their property?
Yeah, once we have a cleared soil sample, we'd like to complete all of erosion control, but if that isn't done and that timing, but the big thing is once we have a cleared soil sample, they can get on. Even if they don't have a cleared soil sample, if they're 150 feet away from a burned structure, they can go on their property now.
Oh, okay.
So there is that. So that allows them to be on the property. Let's say they had 5 acres and they had a piece of the property that was flat, and they could park their RV.
Yeah.
They could be on there right now.
And like I said, I haven't been up there. Any notion, just ballpark, that of folks that are back on their properties?
Boy, I'd hate to even give you a number.
I don't want to trap you in a number.
We have.
Is it a few? Is it some?
Yeah, it's some. There's some. We've had some people that have come in some for the. That have gotten a temporary trailer, gone through the process, and others that just go and put a temporary trailer on, and
or friends or relatives have said, "Hey, you can borrow my trailer as long as you need it."
Exactly.
And we know it's going to be less than 3 years because of that ordinance.
Yeah.
What? We're getting short on time, but what are we looking at for the next couple of months? One thing I just asked, it's a long process, and I just appreciate the public's patience, especially with all the trucks on the road, because I know that's a huge impact and not something that, as residents of Calaveras County, that we're used to. And but as far as we're probably looking into March, April, and again, it's weather permitting, and the weather has a lot to do with our time frames. Yeah, because we're all still doing our rain dances.
Yeah, exactly, and rightfully so. But when we had 30, 32 teams going, we're clearing anywhere from 10 to 12 properties a day with that many teams. So, but that again, that's weather permitting, and so we're looking at probably the beginning of April, right around there. Again, we've also had approximately 125 properties sign into the program since we last spoke. So that also extends the time frame for So and we continue. I think we just got in the last week and a half 20 new property
this
owners.
Late in the process?
Yeah,
is it folks that maybe thought, okay, we're going to be able to get it done ourselves, and then they realized it's too much work and okay, or
there has been a little bit of that. Our office really performed a lot of outreach right before the holidays because we knew we hadn't heard anything from these property owners, so we sent out a mailer, made some phone calls, and some of these people were either out of state or undecided about the program, and so this was kind of a push to contact all those property owners that hadn't signed up to either say, here's a chance for you to still come in, and we want to get them signed in early because if we're in their area and we can get a team that exactly
not backtrack
exactly.
How is the rest of the workload in your office, or has that kind of? And I know you're not pushing that work to the wayside, but I mean, is there much going on in the county otherwise? I mean, are we going to see building around the county as the sun starts shining?
I had a staff person. Staff is doing a great job in maintaining regular services, so my hat's off to them. But we're still going out and doing well inspections outside of the Butte fire burn area. Staff was out doing a test holes for septic systems on a property today down off of Pool Station Road. So, I mean, there is still activity. We're still seeing activity. Of course, the weather slows it down, but we have a lot of other public health programs in the office that we, inspecting food facilities and et cetera. So
the day-to-day work is still there. That's what I was wondering.
So it's still going, and we're seeing a lot of activity and stuff occur. So that's good.
That's great. Well, that is a hats off to you and your staff for being able to both do this extraneous outside work that isn't part of the normal plan for the day, and yet be able to keep, like I say, the day-to-day environmental health concerns still percolating through the county. Yes, that was a pun. I'm sorry. But what do you hope is the sort of completion day? Is it maybe June to put a number way out there, and like I say, I don't want to trap you to anything.
Yesterday.
Yeah, that's right.
No,
ideally it was last week.
No, I right now looking at it. I'm hoping, the first or second week of April but that's,
just
being
after
optimistic.
The Easter bunny passes
exactly,
through,
and then that's weather permitting. But they're understanding that our office will be doing a lot of activity after that, as far as reconciling all the information. Once we get the data, we'll be doing the invoicing to those people that had insurance. So we'll be dealing this for the debris removal will be complete, but the administrative part will be ongoing.
There's
for a while.
There's always paperwork, ladies and gentlemen. Well, if you see these folks working out there, folks, thank them. And I thank you, Jason Baetzer, for being here again from Calaveras Environmental Health. Folks, thanks for joining me. I'm Mike Taylor. Enjoy.